The radio crackled to life at 3:47 hours, breaking the desert silence like a gunshot through glass. Control, this is Viper 1. We have an unidentified Apache helicopter approximately 15 miles southeast of Fob Thunderbolt. Single bird, flying dark, no transponder. The voice carried that particular mix of confusion and concern that every air traffic controller had learned to fear during 3 years of insurgent drone attacks and stolen aircraft incidents. Major Patricia Valkyrie Kaczynski adjusted her night vision goggles and smiled in the darkness of her AH-64D Apache longbow cockpit. The smile wasn't visible to anyone, buried as it was beneath layers of Kevlar and carbon fiber, but somehow it seemed to radiate through the radio waves themselves. She'd been flying this particular route for 6 nights straight, always just outside authorized airspace, always just beyond the reach of standard patrol patterns. Tonight, finally, they'd noticed. Viper 1, control, maintain visual contact. We're scrambling intercept. The controller's voice had shifted from concerned to professionally tense. Standard protocol for unidentified military aircraft in a combat zone. Patricia had written half those protocols herself, back when she was still trying to prove that a woman could think strategically about air warfare instead of just flying pretty patterns in the sky. The Apache banked left with mechanical precision, its twin General Electric T700 turboshaft engines purring like a predator that had just caught scent of prey. Patricia's hands moved across the control with the fluid confidence of someone who had logged over 4,000 flight hours in rotary-wing aircraft, most of them in conditions that would have grounded lesser pilots. Her weapon systems officer, Captain Marcus Ghost Williams, sat silently in the front seat, trusting her completely despite having flown with her for only 3 weeks. "Valkyrie, we've got company inbound," Ghost murmured through the intercom. His thermal imaging display showed 2 distinct heat signatures approaching from the northwest, F-16 Fighting Falcons, their afterburners painting brilliant white trails across his screen. "Looks like the brass finally decided to take us seriously." Patricia's laugh echoed through the cockpit, a sound that somehow managed to be both melodic and predatory. It was the laugh of someone who had spent 8 years being underestimated, dismissed, and quietly proving every doubter wrong. Tonight, under a moonless Afghan sky, that pattern was about to change in ways that would echo through military aviation history for decades to come. The desert stretched endlessly below them, a canvas of shadows and ancient secrets. Somewhere in that darkness, 4,000 American soldiers slept in temporary safety, unaware that their continued existence depended entirely on the skills of a pilot most of them had never heard of, flying a mission that officially didn't exist. Patricia keyed her radio with deliberate slowness, knowing that every word she spoke would be recorded, analyzed, and eventually become legend. "Control, this is Valkyrie. Permission to engage in defensive maneuvers." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down before gods. The 2 F-16s closed distance with predatory efficiency, their pilots undoubtedly running through engagement protocols, while simultaneously trying to understand what kind of lunatic would fly an Apache helicopter through restricted airspace in the middle of a combat zone. Lead pilot Captain Jake Razor Morrison had 12 years of fighter experience and 3 confirmed kills against insurgent aircraft. His wingman, Lieutenant Sarah Phoenix Chen, was newer but hungry, eager to prove herself in a squadron that still whispered about whether women belonged in air-to-air combat. "Unknown Apache, this is Razor 1. You are in violation of restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately and adjust heading to 270 degrees for escort to base." Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. Apache helicopters didn't challenge F-16 fighters. It simply wasn't done. Patricia's response came through with crystal clarity, her voice carrying an undertone of amusement that made both fighter pilots pause. "Razor 1, this is Major Patricia Kaczynski, call sign Valkyrie. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Suggest you check with higher authority before making demands you might regret." The silence that followed stretched across radio frequencies like elastic about to snap. Morrison exchanged glances with his wingman, both pilots suddenly aware that they might have stumbled into something significantly more complex than a simple airspace violation. The name Kaczynski meant nothing to them, but the confidence in her voice suggested someone who held cards they couldn't see. "Control, Razor 1. Request verification on Major Patricia Kaczynski, call sign Valkyrie." Morrison's voice had lost some of its commanding edge, replaced by the careful neutrality of a man beginning to suspect he was out of his depth. The radio crackled with static before Control responded, and when the voice came through, both fighter pilots could hear the subtle shift in tone that indicated someone higher up the chain of command had just entered the conversation. "Razor 1, stand by for authentication." The pause stretched long enough for Patricia to execute a perfect tactical turn, bringing her Apache into position where its advanced targeting systems could track both F-16s simultaneously. Ghost's voice came through the intercom with barely contained excitement. "Val, they're lighting us up with targeting radar, but they're not getting lock-on. Our countermeasures are working perfectly." The electronic warfare suite that Patricia had specifically requested for this mission was performing exactly as designed, turning her Apache into a ghost that fighter aircraft couldn't quite grasp. The desert wind carried the sound of jet engines across the mountains as both F-16s adjusted their formation, trying to understand how a helicopter pilot was managing to evade their targeting systems. Morrison had faced insurgent pilots flying captured aircraft, but they had been desperate amateurs. This was something entirely different, professional, calculated, and unnerving in its precision. "Razor 1, control. Authentication confirmed. Major Kaczynski is operating under classified orders directly from CENTCOM. You are directed to maintain overwatch, but do not, repeat, do not attempt intercept." The controller's voice carried the weight of someone delivering orders that had come from much higher up the chain than anyone had initially realized. Both fighter pilots felt the sudden vertigo of realizing they had been operating with incomplete information. Patricia keyed her radio again, and this time her voice carried a note of professional courtesy mixed with unmistakable authority. "Razor 1, Phoenix 1, recommend you adjust to observation altitude. We're about to light up some very unfriendly targets, and you'll want a good view for the after-action report." The casual mention of classified knowledge about their call signs sent another chill through both fighter pilots. The Apache banked toward a series of coordinates that existed only in Patricia's mission briefing and the targeting computer of her aircraft. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, a network of insurgent communication stations had been operating for months, coordinating attacks against American convoys with sophisticated precision. Traditional military assets had been unable to locate them due to their mobility and advanced countermeasures. Tonight, that was about to change. Ghost's targeting display began painting symbols across the landscape as their advanced sensors penetrated electronic camouflage that had stymied intelligence assets for half a year. "Valkyrie, I'm showing multiple heat signatures in the target zone. Looks like we found their mobile command center." His voice carried the satisfaction of a hunter who had finally cornered elusive prey. The F-16s maintained altitude, while their pilots struggled to understand how an Apache helicopter had located targets that satellite surveillance and drone reconnaissance had failed to identify. Morrison's respect for the unknown pilot was growing with each passing minute, though he still couldn't quite believe what he was witnessing. Patricia's hands moved across her weapons controls with practiced precision, selecting Hellfire missiles and adjusting targeting parameters for maximum effectiveness. The insurgent communication network below had been responsible for coordinating attacks that had killed 37 American soldiers over the past 4 months. Tonight, under the cover of darkness, and with 2 of America's finest fighter pilots as witnesses, that network was about to cease existing. "Ghost, Target acquisition complete. Multiple confirmed enemy positions. Request permission to engage. Patricia's voice had shifted into the cold professionalism of a combat pilot about to eliminate threats to American forces. The laughter was gone, replaced by the focused intensity of someone who understood that every missile she fired would save lives among the soldiers sleeping safely back at base. The radio crackled as authorization came through encrypted channels. Valkyrie, control. You are cleared hot. Repeat, you are cleared hot for engagement of confirmed enemy targets. The formal language carried weight that both fighter pilots recognized. This wasn't a routine patrol or reconnaissance mission. This was a precisely planned strike operation against high-value targets. Patricia's first Hellfire missile streaked through the darkness like a falling star. Its infrared guidance system locked onto the largest heat signature in the enemy compound. The explosion bloomed orange and white against the desert landscape, illuminating scattered equipment and desperate figures running for cover. Secondary explosions followed as fuel and ammunition stores detonated, turning the night into a brief dawn. Direct hit on primary target, Ghost reported, his voice professional despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Multiple secondary explosions confirmed. Target appears to be completely destroyed. The thermal imaging display showed the devastating effectiveness of Patricia's strike. Years of insurgent planning and equipment reduced to burning debris in seconds. The Apache circled like a predatory bird, Patricia's targeting systems identifying fleeing vehicles and personnel attempting to escape with intelligence materials. Each Hellfire missile that followed was placed with surgical precision, eliminating specific threats while avoiding civilian structures that thermal imaging identified in the surrounding area. This wasn't random destruction. It was calculated elimination of military targets by a pilot who understood the difference. Morrison watched the engagement with growing amazement, his F-16 sensors recording everything for later analysis. The helicopter pilot below was demonstrating levels of tactical awareness and weapons accuracy that belonged in textbooks. Each shot was perfectly placed, each maneuver calculated for maximum effectiveness while minimizing collateral damage. This was artistry disguised as warfare. Razor 1, Phoenix 1, are you recording this engagement? Patricia's voice came through with clinical professionalism. Recommend you document target destruction patterns for intelligence analysis. This network has been coordinating attacks against our convoys for months. Her casual assumption that they would want detailed records demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking that usually belonged to field commanders, not individual pilots. The final Hellfire missile eliminated the last vehicle attempting to flee the compound, its explosion marking the end of an insurgent communication network that had operated with impunity for too long. Patricia banked the Apache away from the target zone, her mission complete with the kind of precision that would generate detailed after-action reports and probably uncomfortable questions for the intelligence officers who had failed to locate these targets through conventional means. Ghost's voice carried satisfaction mixed with professional respect as he reported mission completion. Valkyrie, all primary and secondary targets eliminated. No civilian casualties detected. Mission success across all parameters. The thermal imaging display showed only burning wreckage where sophisticated enemy positions had existed minutes earlier. The two F-16s maintained overwatch as Patricia guided her Apache toward home base, both fighter pilots struggling to process what they had witnessed. Morrison had flown combat missions across 3 theaters of operation, but he had never seen a helicopter pilot demonstrate such tactical awareness and weapons precision. Whoever Major Patricia Kaczynski was, she clearly belonged in a different category from standard rotary-wing pilots. Control, Valkyrie returning to base. Mission complete, all targets eliminated. Request medical standby for wounded enemy personnel if any survived. Patricia's voice carried the professional courtesy of a pilot who understood that even enemies deserved medical treatment when combat operations concluded. The request demonstrated strategic thinking about post-engagement protocols and humanitarian obligations. The radio silence that followed spoke volumes about the impact of what everyone had witnessed. An Apache helicopter pilot had successfully located and eliminated targets that conventional intelligence assets had failed to identify, doing so with a level of precision that challenged assumptions about rotary wing capabilities in modern warfare. The implications would ripple through military aviation circles for years to come. As the Apache's navigation lights disappeared into the distance, both fighter pilots found themselves reassessing everything they thought they knew about helicopter warfare and the capabilities of pilots they had never heard of. Captain Morrison's after-action report would eventually become required reading at the Air Force Academy, though the classified details would remain hidden for decades. The desert returned to silence, broken only by distant explosions as enemy ammunition continued detonating in the destroyed compound. Somewhere in that darkness, American soldiers would wake the next morning unaware that their continued safety had been purchased with precision strikes delivered by a pilot whose reputation was about to change everything anyone thought they knew about women in combat aviation. Patricia guided her Apache through the pre-dawn darkness, her hands steady on the controls despite having just completed one of the most successful interdiction missions in theater history. The targeting data collected during the engagement would revolutionize understanding of insurgent communication networks, while the weapon's accuracy demonstrated would become the new standard for helicopter-delivered precision strikes. Ghost broke the comfortable silence between pilot and weapon systems officer as they approached friendly airspace. "Val, that was some of the finest flying I've ever seen. Where did you learn to put Hellfires on target with that kind of precision?" His question carried genuine professional curiosity mixed with respect for skills that clearly exceeded standard training protocols. Patricia's laugh returned, softer now but still carrying that undertone of confidence that had marked her radio transmissions throughout the mission. 8 years of being told I couldn't do things, Ghost. Turns out that's excellent motivation for learning to do them better than anyone expects. Her response hinted at a history of challenges overcome and expectations exceeded through pure determination and skill. The Apache crossed into friendly airspace as dawn began painting the eastern horizon with subtle shades of pink and gold. Behind them, smoke columns rose from destroyed insurgent positions while ahead, FOB Thunderbolt waited with hangar facilities and debriefing officers who would spend days analyzing every aspect of the night's engagement. Patricia had accomplished something that would reshape tactical doctrine. Control Tower's voice crackled through their headsets with barely contained excitement. "Valkyrie, Control, outstanding work tonight. Ground Commander reports complete elimination of insurgent communication network that has been coordinating attacks for months. Preliminary assessment indicates this was the most successful interdiction mission in theater history." The praise was genuine and well-deserved. As Patricia began her approach to the landing pad, she reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. 8 years earlier, fresh out of flight school, she had been assigned to transport duties while male classmates with lower scores received combat assignments. Tonight, she had demonstrated capabilities that would force every military aviation commander to reconsider their assumptions about women in warfare. The Apache touched down with mechanical precision, its rotor wash dispersing across the landing pad as Patricia completed shutdown procedures with the methodical thoroughness that characterized everything she did. Ghost remained silent, understanding that they had just participated in something that would be discussed in military circles for decades to come. Patricia removed her helmet and looked up at the lightning sky, watching as the last stars faded into morning. Somewhere overhead, two F-16 pilots were undoubtedly having conversations with their squadron commanders about the helicopter pilot who had just redefined their understanding of rotary wing capabilities. The implications would ripple outward like stones thrown into still water. The debriefing would begin within the hour, followed by detailed analysis of targeting data, weapons accuracy, and tactical decision-making that had characterized the night's mission. Patricia understood that her performance would be scrutinized by officers who had spent careers believing that women lacked the psychological makeup for precision combat operations. Tonight had provided evidence to the contrary. As she climbed down from the Apache's cockpit, Patricia could see ground crew members gathering to examine the aircraft that had just returned from the most successful interdiction mission in recent memory. Their expressions carried the mixture of professional curiosity and personal respect that she had been working 8 years to earn. Tonight, finally, she had achieved something that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The morning sun climbed higher above the desert horizon, casting long shadows across the flight line where Patricia's Apache sat like a predatory bird returning from a successful hunt. Somewhere in the distance, smoke still rose from the destroyed insurgent compound, while American soldiers began another day of relative safety, purchased with precision and courage delivered under cover of darkness. Patricia walked toward the debriefing facility, her flight suit still carrying the scent of cordite and machinery that marked successful combat operations. Behind her, the Apache that had served as her instrument of precision warfare sat cooling in the morning sun, its weapon systems having performed flawlessly under conditions that tested both equipment and operator to their absolute limits. The door to the debriefing room opened as Patricia approached, revealing Colonel Marcus Webb, the base commander who had specifically requested her for this mission, despite significant resistance from officers who questioned whether women possessed the psychological stability for precision combat operations. His expression carried the satisfaction of a commander whose controversial decision had been vindicated by results that exceeded all expectations. "Major Kaczynski, that was extraordinary work," Colonel Webb said, his voice carrying genuine admiration mixed with professional respect. "Initial intelligence analysis indicates you eliminated communication networks that conventional assets have been searching for since January. How did you locate targets that satellite surveillance couldn't identify?" His question went to the heart of what made Patricia's mission successful. Patricia settled into the briefing room chair with the casual confidence of someone who had just proven every critic wrong through demonstrated competence under combat conditions. "Sir, sometimes you have to think like prey to understand where predators hide. Insurgent communication networks avoid satellite detection by using terrain masking and electronic countermeasures. But they still generate heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions detectable by properly configured helicopter sensors." The technical explanation demonstrated strategic thinking that went far beyond standard pilot training, revealing intellectual capabilities that complemented the physical skills she had demonstrated during the night's engagement. Colonel Webb nodded slowly, understanding that he was dealing with someone who approached warfare as both art and science, combining intuition with technological expertise. "The targeting accuracy you demonstrated tonight will become the new standard for helicopter-delivered precision strikes," Webb continued. "Every Hellfire missile hit primary targets with minimal collateral damage. That level of precision under combat conditions is unprecedented for rotary wing operations." His praise was specific and professional, acknowledging achievements that would reshape tactical doctrine. Patricia accepted the compliment with quiet professionalism, understanding that her performance had implications beyond personal career advancement. Tonight's mission would be analyzed by tactical officers who needed to understand how helicopter pilots could achieve precision strike capabilities traditionally associated with fixed-wing aircraft. The lessons learned would save lives and improve operational effectiveness. Ghost entered the debriefing room carrying data storage devices containing complete records of the night's engagement, his expression reflecting the satisfaction of a weapons systems officer who had participated in textbook execution of precision warfare. "Sir, thermal imaging and targeting data are complete. Every aspect of the engagement was recorded for analysis." His report was crisp and professional. The next 3 hours would be spent in detailed examination of tactical decisions, weapons accuracy, and operational procedures that had characterized the most successful interdiction mission in theater history. Patricia understood that her choices would be scrutinized by officers who needed to understand how similar results could be achieved by other pilots facing comparable challenges. Excellence demanded sharing knowledge. As data analysis began, Patricia reflected on the path that had brought her from transport pilot to precision strike specialist, remembering every slight, every dismissive comment, every suggestion that women lacked the mental toughness for combat operations. Tonight's mission had provided definitive answers to questions that had shaped her entire military career. The evidence was irrefutable. The morning sun climbed higher above Fob Thunderbolt as detailed analysis revealed the full scope of what Patricia had accomplished during her night mission. Intelligence officers who had spent months searching for insurgent communication networks found themselves examining thermal imaging data that showed precisely how those networks had been detected and eliminated by a pilot they had never heard of. Colonel Webb studied targeting accuracy statistics with growing amazement, understanding that Patricia's performance represented a fundamental shift in helicopter warfare capabilities. Major, these precision statistics exceed fighter aircraft standards. How did you achieve this level of accuracy with Hellfire missiles delivered from a rotary wing platform? His question sought technical understanding of unprecedented achievements. Patricia's explanation combined pilot intuition with technical expertise, describing how advanced sensor integration and weapon system modifications could transform Apache helicopters into precision strike platforms capable of eliminating point targets with fighter aircraft accuracy. Her knowledge demonstrated years of study and experimentation that had prepared her for exactly this type of mission. The preparation had been invisible until tonight. The implications rippled outward through military aviation command structures, as officers realized that a helicopter pilot had demonstrated capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about rotary wing limitations in modern warfare. Patricia's mission would become case study material for advanced tactical training programs, though her name would remain classified for years to come. Results spoke louder than recognition. As debriefing concluded, Patricia understood that her career had reached an inflection point that would define everything that followed. Tonight's mission had established her reputation among officers who mattered, proving capabilities that opened doors previously closed to women in military aviation. The barriers hadn't disappeared, but they had been significantly weakened by demonstrated competence under extreme conditions. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the flight line as Patricia returned to her Apache for post-mission maintenance inspection. Ground crew members who had heard details of the night's engagement looked at both pilot and aircraft with newfound respect, understanding that they were maintaining equipment that had just made military aviation history. Their professionalism carried undertones of admiration. Patricia ran her hands along the Apache's armor plating, checking for battle damage while reflecting on 8 years of preparation that had culminated in one perfect mission. Every slight, every dismissive comment, every suggestion that women couldn't handle combat operations had become fuel for the determination that powered tonight's success. Vindication felt like freedom mixed with responsibility. The helicopter that had served as her instrument of precision warfare showed minimal wear from the night's engagement, its systems having performed flawlessly under conditions that tested both equipment and operator beyond normal parameters. Patricia understood that machine and pilot had become something greater than the sum of their individual capabilities, achieving synthesis between human intuition and technological precision. As evening approached, Patricia received word that her mission brief had been forwarded to Pentagon analysts who would spend weeks studying every aspect of the engagement. The tactical innovations she had developed would influence helicopter warfare doctrine for decades, though her contributions would remain classified long after their impact became apparent in operational procedures worldwide. The desert sky began its transition from day to night as Patricia completed her maintenance inspection, satisfied that her Apache remained fully operational despite having delivered the most successful precision strike mission in recent theater history. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight had established capabilities that would reshape how military commanders thought about rotary wing assets in modern warfare. Colonel Webb approached as Patricia finished her inspection, his expression carrying the gravity of someone about to deliver news that would reshape a career. Major Kaczynski, I've received word from CENTCOM. They want you to develop training protocols for precision helicopter operations. You'll be working directly with Advanced Tactical Development Command to establish new standards for rotary wing combat operations. The assignment represented recognition that Patricia's innovations extended beyond individual achievement to systematic advancement of military aviation capabilities. Her techniques would be studied, refined, and taught to pilots who would carry helicopter warfare into new realms of precision and effectiveness. The influence would extend far beyond her personal career, affecting hundreds of pilots and thousands of missions. Patricia accepted the assignment with quiet professionalism, understanding that her work was transitioning from proving personal capabilities to advancing institutional knowledge that would benefit American military aviation for generations. The transition from proving ground to teaching laboratory represented recognition that her contributions had achieved permanent significance within military doctrine and training protocols. As night fell over Fob Thunderbolt, Patricia walked toward her quarters carrying the satisfaction of someone who had spent 8 years preparing for one perfect opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that others had doubted. Tomorrow would begin the process of sharing knowledge that could save lives and improve operational effectiveness for countless pilots who would never know her name. The stars emerged above the desert as Patricia reflected on the curious path that had brought her from dismissed transport pilot to architect of revolutionary helicopter warfare techniques. The journey had required unwavering determination mixed with tactical brilliance, supported by technological innovation and strategic thinking that exceeded conventional pilot training. Tonight had validated every choice and sacrifice. The Apache sat silent on the flight line, its systems cooling under starlight while ground crews completed maintenance procedures that would prepare it for future missions. The helicopter had become more than military equipment. It was the instrument through which Patricia had redefined what rotary-wing aircraft could achieve in modern warfare. The partnership between pilot and machine had achieved something extraordinary. Inside her quarters, Patricia began drafting technical reports that would document innovations allowing helicopter pilots to achieve precision strike capabilities traditionally associated with fighter aircraft. The work was detailed and complex, requiring explanation of sensor integration, weapon system modifications, and tactical procedures that had enabled tonight's unprecedented success. Knowledge demanded careful documentation. The reports would eventually reach training facilities, where future helicopter pilots would learn techniques that Patricia had developed through years of experimentation and refinement. Her innovations would become standard procedures, though few pilots would understand the personal journey that had created the knowledge they would consider routine. Influence often remained invisible to those who benefited from it. As Patricia worked through the night, documenting tactical procedures and technical specifications that would reshape helicopter warfare training, she understood that her career had achieved something more significant than personal advancement. Tonight's mission had opened possibilities for countless women who would follow, demonstrating that gender had no bearing on capabilities under combat conditions when training and determination converged. The desert wind carried sounds of a military base settling into nighttime routine as Patricia continued writing, documenting innovations that would influence military aviation for decades to come. Her work was transitioning from individual achievement to institutional advancement, ensuring that the barriers she had overcome would be lower for those who followed. Progress demanded both excellence and sharing knowledge. Morning would bring new responsibilities as Patricia began developing training protocols that would teach other pilots techniques she had spent years perfecting. The transition from proving capabilities to teaching others represented recognition that her contributions had achieved permanent significance within military aviation doctrine. The influence would extend far beyond her personal career, affecting operational effectiveness for generations of pilots. The stars wheeled overhead as Patricia completed her initial technical documentation, understanding that tonight's mission had been both culmination and beginning, proof of capabilities achieved and foundation for advancing military aviation knowledge that would benefit American forces worldwide. The work was far from complete, but the most difficult barriers had been overcome through demonstrated excellence under combat conditions. As dawn approached, Patricia reflected on the curious irony that her greatest professional triumph had occurred in darkness, witnessed only by enemy forces who had been eliminated and friendly pilots who had struggled to understand what they were observing. The most significant victories often happened away from recognition, their importance becoming apparent only through consequences that rippled outward over time. The Apache waited on the flight line as morning light painted the desert landscape, ready for future missions that would benefit from innovations developed during one perfect night of precision warfare. Patricia had transformed both herself and her aircraft into something that exceeded the sum of their individual capabilities, achieving synthesis between human determination and technological precision that would influence helicopter warfare for decades to come. The sun climbed higher above Fob Thunderbolt as a new day began, carrying possibilities that had been created through 8 years of preparation, culminating in one flawless demonstration of capabilities that others had doubted. Patricia's journey from dismissed transport pilot to architect of revolutionary helicopter warfare techniques was complete, though her influence on military aviation was just beginning to unfold. 3 months later, Lieutenant Sarah Phoenix Chen found herself sitting in an advanced tactical development classroom, studying helicopter warfare techniques developed by Major Patricia Valkyrie Kaczynski. The irony wasn't lost on her. The pilot she had been prepared to intercept had become the instructor whose innovations would reshape her understanding of rotary wing capabilities in modern warfare. The training materials bore no photographs or personal details about their creator, but Chen recognized the tactical thinking and precision orientation that had characterized the mysterious Apache pilot she had encountered during what was now known as the Thunderbolt engagement. The techniques being taught carried the unmistakable signature of someone who had achieved mastery through determination and innovation rather than conventional advancement. Patricia's influence had spread throughout military aviation training programs, though her name remained classified at levels that prevented most pilots from knowing who had developed the techniques they were learning. The anonymity was intentional, ensuring that focus remained on capability advancement rather than personality recognition. Excellence spoke through results rather than recognition. In classrooms across multiple military installations, pilots studied tactical procedures that had emerged from one perfect night of precision warfare, learning innovations that would save lives and improve operational effectiveness without knowing the personal journey that had created the knowledge they would soon consider routine. The invisible influence was spreading through demonstration rather than declaration. The legacy extended beyond individual careers to institutional advancement of capabilities that strengthened American military aviation at fundamental levels. Patricia's contributions had achieved the kind of permanent significance that outlasted personal recognition, influencing operational procedures and training protocols that would benefit thousands of pilots over decades of future service. True impact often remained hidden from those who created it. As evening settled over various military installations, where Patricia's innovations were being taught to new generations of pilots, she continued her work developing advanced tactical procedures that would further extend helicopter warfare capabilities. The recognition she had sought 8 years earlier had been replaced by satisfaction derived from advancing knowledge that strengthened American military aviation at institutional levels. The Apache that had served as her instrument of revolutionary demonstration sat ready for missions that would benefit from innovations developed during one perfect night of precision warfare. The partnership between pilot and machine had achieved something that exceeded individual capability, creating synthesis between human determination and technological precision that would influence military aviation for generations to come. The stars emerged above countless military bases, where Patricia's innovations were being studied and refined, carrying knowledge that would save lives and improve operational effectiveness for pilots who would never know her name. The influence was spreading through demonstration and training rather than recognition, ensuring that capabilities would outlast personalities in advancing American military aviation excellence. Patricia's journey from dismissed transport pilot to architect of revolutionary helicopter warfare techniques had achieved completion through demonstrating that determination combined with innovation could overcome any barrier when focused on advancing capabilities that served purposes greater than personal advancement. The lesson would resonate through military aviation training for decades, though its source would remain classified in operational security files. The desert wind carried sounds of a nation's military aviation capabilities being strengthened through innovations that had emerged from one pilot's refusal to accept limitations imposed by others' expectations. Patricia's legacy was writing itself through training programs and operational procedures that would influence American military aviation long after her personal service had concluded. Excellence created its own immortality through advancing knowledge that served purposes greater than individual recognition.